Hello, and welcome to Graywood Gardening. It is the very beginning of March here in Minnesota, and temperatures during the day are starting to get up into the 40s, or at least they are for a week or two. And that means it is theoretically the perfect weather for tapping maple trees to get sap to make maple syrup, which I'm going to be trying to do this year for the very first time ever. Now, the majority of the trees here at Graywood are oaks with some birch and poplar mixed in, and there are just a handful of maples, including this sugar maple here. So what I did is last fall, when it was really easy to tell the trees apart, I came around and I marked with a ribbon all of the maple trees that were large enough around that it was safe to tap them. And you can actually tap just about any kind of maple tree. It doesn't have to be a sugar maple. It can be silver maple, which I have a lot of, or black maple, red maple. Most of the maple family is going to give you good syrup. Now, to tap it, as I understand, all I need to do is drill a hole about 1.5 inches in at a slight upward angle and tap my tap into the hole and hang a bucket. I did wrap some tape around the drill bit here so that I could see exactly where 1.5 inches was, so I don't drill it in too far. All right, and there's even some sap coming out right away. So that's awesome. That's all there is to it. This is exciting though. All right, and that is 9 trees tapped. I am super excited to see how this goes, see how much sap we get, and how much syrup we can make. Well, being the beginning of March here in Zone 4, Minnesota, there isn't a whole lot of gardening outside to be done. In fact, it's going to be almost a month, before we even start to see the first crocus flowers popping up. But that doesn't mean we can't start gardening. There is, in fact, plenty to do down in the seed starting lair, because it is just about time to start the seeds for this year's flowers and vegetables. Welcome to my seed starting lair, which has expanded significantly this year to meet the demands of the 2021 growing season. So now it is time to start planting bell peppers, which we grow a lot of. And this year I decided that we are going to do an experiment with different types of containers to see if there's a container that is better for growing bell peppers. So normally I like to grow bell peppers in a 3.5 inch pot. This is 3.5 inch by 3.5 inch by 3.5 inch. I know that this grows a good bell pepper. It works great, but I would like to challenge the winning pot here with a standard 6-pack tray. Now this is actually almost exactly as deep as the 3.5 inch pot. It's just that it's only like a 2-inch cell size. So if I can grow bell peppers just as well in this little 6-pack, I can fit a lot more plants per tray. So if this works, that would be a big win. But both of these have the big drawback is that they're plastic. Right? And I can use a pot like this many times. One like this is a little flimsier. It'll last for several years, but it's eventually going to rip. But at some point, both of these are going to end up in a landfill somewhere. So the most obvious alternative is the peat pot. So peat pot, in theory, is completely biodegradable. And the concept is you'll plant the peat pot, you'll start your seed in the peat pot, and you'll just plant the entire peat pot in the ground. And the peat pot itself will decompose away into the ground as the plant's roots spread. I will say I have used peat pots once before, and wasn't a huge fan of them. And the main reason is I planted the peat pot in the ground and nothing decomposed. At the end of the year, the entire peat pot was there. Going up against the peat pot is going to be the toilet paper tube. I love the concept of this, which is you just pack this with dirt, plant your seed in here, and you actually get a little bit more height, a little bit more root growth area than you do in these others. Like the peat pot, this is biodegradable, so you can leave it in the ground, but unlike the peat pot, it's got a big opening at the bottom. It's got a big opening at the bottom. So when you plant this whole thing in the ground, again, without disturbing any roots or anything, it's got this hole that all the roots can grow down and spread out from. So, only downside is I've used toilet paper tubes before, and that was the worst seed starting experience I have ever had. Lost everything that was started in toilet paper tubes. But those toilet paper tubes that we had when I did that experiment years and years ago were white. And I didn't think about it at the time, but afterwards I was like, oh, what if those were bleached? What if I planted my seeds in a bleached tube that I then repeatedly soaked with water and leached the bleach out? So I'm going to try it again. The final thing I'm going to try, in addition to these four, and one I'm most excited about, is a paper pot. And a paper pot is literally just a little pot you make yourself out of newspaper. It is very similar in size to the 3.5-inch pot. It is guarantee you that this is going to biodegrade when you plant it. Just like the peat pot and the toilet paper tube, the idea is you shove the whole thing in the ground. But yeah, this is newspaper, it's newsprint, it is going to disintegrate so fast. So I'm super excited to see how this one works out. Now, for the paper pot, I thought I would show you how I am making this. So they make special tools for making paper pots, but that's not really necessary. What you do need is a newspaper, and these things can be hard to come by these days. Take your newspaper, I cut it in half. If it's a double spread like this, this is going to be our paper pot. First thing I do is I fold it in half the long way. Basically what you're doing here is you're determining how tall your pot's going to be. I like fold it in half the long way. This feels like a good height to me. Then, this is my favorite part, you need to get yourself an empty wine bottle. Specifically a wine bottle that has like a good indent in the bottom. Almost all of them do. But if there's one with a flat bottom, that's not going to work. You need like the big indent. And this is how big around your pot's going to be. So all we're going to do is we're going to set the wine bottle on the paper, leaving some of the newspaper sticking out the bottom, enough that it will go, when you fold it up, it'll be a little bit more than halfway up. So then, I'm going to use this as my template, and I'm just going to roll this up. Once you get it rolled up, starting where the seam is, you're going to fold this down and up into the wine bottle base, like so. Then, pull this off. Technically at this point you have a pot. I do think it's a little flimsy here on top where the seam is, so I like to fold that over, and then I just do like a little fold over all around the top so that it looks consistent. The idea behind the paper pots, as I understand it, is this is actually quite stable, right? And it's not falling apart. But once you put dirt in, and you will pack the dirt down and you'll flatten the bottom, and that will make them much, much more stable. So I am super excited to see what things are going to look like growing in these. All right, let's get started. very important for the toilet paper tubes that you pack the soil down very, very firmly. If you're not packed down really well, when you lift these up, the soil will just pop right out the bottom. So it's actually that compaction that holds everything in place nicely. By the way, the two varieties that I'm doing here is X3R Red Knight F1 hybrid from Johnny Seed versus Ace F1, also from Johnny Seeds, also an F1. So we are testing a lot of different varieties of stuff we're growing now that we're gardening someplace where we don't plan on moving anytime soon or ever. We're trying to find the varieties that are going to grow best for us in our conditions. So, one last drink of water, and then we will get these guys onto the heat mats. Alright, so we will follow this experiment over the next few months and even after things get planted in the garden to see how they grow and how much fruit we get off of them. But I do have more seeds starting to do, and it's still cold outside, so it is a perfect time to start filling up these grow benches. So I've been collecting the sap every day for the last few days now, and I find I'm getting around 2 gallons of sap a day across all 9 trees. So that's pretty good. That's around a quart, I think. I think that's around a quart of sap per tree per day. And that 2 gallons, when you boil it all down, is going to only give us like maybe half a cup of syrup. But you know, over the course of a week, that's almost a quart of syrup in a week, and theoretically the sap will be running for at least a few weeks. So that seems pretty good to me. Obviously, if I had all sugar maples, that ratio would be slightly better, but I only have a couple sugar maples and a bunch of silver maples. All right, and ooh, this one has ice in it, which I'm told is a good thing because the ice is almost all water. And so I have to do a little bit less boiling by getting that ice out of the way. All right, well, step one of converting the sap into magical maple syrup is boiling it. Actually, all of the steps are just boiling it and then filtering gunk out. So the general advice that's given is boil it outside on a grill or something until you get close to sap temperature. Then bring it inside and bring it the rest of the way to sap temperature inside. But yeah, from what I understand, now we just wait. And as this sap level goes down, I'll put more sap in here until it's time to go inside. Oh, this process has been taking longer than expected. Definitely learned a few things, particularly about how to best handle things on the grill. We actually needed to keep the grill lid closed to get things up to heat fast enough, but we've reduced the 6 gallons that we had now down to about 2 quarts. Little Greywood has already gone to bed, so here's hoping we get it the rest of the way down before it gets too late tonight. I'll let you know how it goes. Alright, we wrapped up pretty late last night, but we did successfully make our very own homemade maple syrup with sap from our trees. We actually made a bit more than this, but having just made our own maple syrup, we immediately decided that we needed to make strawberry pancakes for breakfast this morning, and then we ate a whole bunch of it. But the maple syrup is delicious, it looks beautiful, it's nothing but sap from our trees that we boiled down into this deliciousness. So I cannot wait to see how much more sap we get and how much more maple syrup we can make during the few weeks that the sap is flowing. Very exciting! Big success!
Put this right here. Help me pour it in. Okay, here. Let's stand right there. Here, this one's a big one. Go. Yay! Look at all that. This one has a lot more in it. You want to help pour it? Go. Bubbles. That one, I think that one has a lot on it. Let's go this way. You got put these in there. Well, don't do that.
I started this video on the very first day of March when I was tapping that first tree. It's now the end of March, and the crocus here at Graywood have been blooming for about 2 weeks. They started around the 15th of March. Compared to last year, the very first crocus didn't bloom until the 31st of March. So we are definitely having an earlier and much warmer spring this year, and after a pretty mild winter too. And it's not just the bulbs like the crocus and hyacinth and alliums that are starting to come up. All kinds of stuff in the garden is coming up earlier than usual, including the yarrow, bachelor buttons, chrysanthemum, bee balm. In the veggie garden, our French sorrel is well underway, and we even had some spinach that we planted last fall over winter and start coming up again. So as grateful as I am for the warm weather, it has got me feeling like I'm already a little bit behind for the year, because I spent most of my March running around collecting sap from trees rather than getting the garden beds ready. So it's about time to get to work. Well, that's everything I have for you on this video. Next time, I think we're actually going to go over the 2021 gardening plan for Graywood, and then we'll start working on the garden beds. All right, until then, happy gardening.